Hi, my name is Mike Messier. I'm joined today by Gonzo. We are here to discuss the career, the legacy, the controversy of the man that was known professionally as the Ultimate Warrior. He later changed his name to Warrior. He was born James Brian Helwig in 1959. Gonzo, welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me, dude. I'm excited to talk about this stuff.
And going into this, I know that there are people that are going to be maybe even upset that we're even doing a show like this. And I would just say, hey, stick around. If you are upset, you're welcome to leave a comment. In fact, we'll even field comments right here during the live broadcast. If you're watching the replay, you can leave a comment on the YouTube link. I know for a fact that Ultimate Warrior said some things that were upsetting to people, and they had a right to be upset by some of the things he said. However, what I liked about the Ultimate Warrior, Gonzo, was the 2011, 2012 motivational videos. I'm not talking about his statements about Hollywood or on the Connecticut speech that went askew very poorly for everybody involved. I'm talking about just Warrior in his barn, Warrior in his gym, working out at 4 or 5 in the morning, 2 in the morning. And he was a busy guy. He was a painter. He ran Warrior University. He ran his website. I believe he had 2 daughters and a wife. And he was in New Mexico, I believe. And he was pretty happy, but he was making time. It started with Karma is About to Collect, a shoot that he did, basically just himself in his own den on Hulk Hogan. The response to that, because not only did Warrior shoot, and shoot for non-wrestling fan means to say how you really feel about somebody, oftentimes in a negative way. So this shoot that he did on Hulk Hogan, at times, there was little kernels of inspiration or motivation in it. He was saying things like, I always thought that we'd be better men than this. And I didn't realize at the time we were working together, Hulk Hogan, that I would end up being the smartest guy left standing, you know. And so the kernels of inspiration that came from this very kind of lambasting shoot on Hulk Hogan, it led Warrior, I believe, within a couple of days to start doing the It Does Matter videos, which were, what he said himself, they were supposed to be like 2 to 3 minutes. They ended up being more like 10 to 20 minutes, where he would just talk about setting goals for oneself, doing in life what you feel is best for you, not following the path, and not to pick on anybody, of course, but the 9-to-5 path, the preordained, we're going to make widgets for the rest of our life mentality. Warrior was not into that. And he encouraged others like me, you, everybody to, if that didn't work for you, to break free from it. He was often misconstrued, I think. I think people thought that Warrior was telling them to quit their job and join the circus or join the witches and of Warwick or something like that, or the witches of Eastwick. But he was just saying everyone's going to be true to themselves. And if you're not happy in life, you've got to make a quick move to change it up. That's the Warrior that I like. That's the Warrior that I got into. Not even the wrestler, to be honest with you. When I was a kid and the face paint and the matches with Rick Rude and Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, which I now say were the best 3 matches at those 3 WrestleManias. But at the time, I was not a wrestling buddies playing, young guy gung-ho about the Ultimate Warrior. It was the 2011, 2012 motivational videos that spoke to me. That's the Warrior that I defend. When I met him, as this picture illustrates, in October 5th, I believe, 2012, thanks to the guys in Boston, the wrestling promotion that brought him up there. That's the guy that I liked. So I'll hand it over to you, Gonzo, for your opening thoughts, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, man. For me, it's kind of a twofold thing because I was born in '87. I was actually born the day after WrestleMania 3. So it's like I always joke to myself, like, man, biggest event in wrestling at the time, and the slam heard around the world. Hogan slams Andre, and then 24 hours later, I popped out. You know what I mean? So it's just I just laugh about that. But like when I was a kid, man, it was Warrior, Hogan, and Savage. You know what I mean? It was those 3 guys. And Warrior's run was short, so it's like I was a young kid. I only got to see him for the few years that he wrestled. And then when he came back in WCW, which was basically a disaster for the most part. Well, actually it wasn't, but we could get into that another time. But then like, I totally forgot about Ultimate Warrior kind of like I stopped watching wrestling in like 2002, maybe it just got lame for me. So I stopped watching it and then I kind of picked it back up like 10 years later. But in between, I don't know if you know this, but he, I think it was 2010 or 2011, he signed some kind of deal with a record company called Sumerian Records. And quite a few of the bands that I listened to still and were listening to at that time were on that deal. So I actually was like on Facebook or something and a video popped up for one of the bands that I listened to. And it was fucking Ultimate Warrior. And
was it Asking Alexandra? Okay.
Yeah, it was. And I was like, yo, what the fuck? So then I ended up watching it and I was just like, so that kind of just like sparked my fucking interest right there. Like, again, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, dude, Ultimate Warrior. Because I hadn't seen him in so long. And I thought maybe he died. I wasn't sure. And then shortly after that, I ended up finding that self-destruction video. It was up on one of the streaming services. So I watched that. And I'm like, oh, wow, And then I ended up running into his motivational videos similar to you. And like for me, from the time I was like 18 till the time I was 27, like I developed a really bad drug problem with prescription painkillers like Oxys and Percocets and shit like that. And in 2013, I checked myself into a methadone clinic because like basically I felt, I have no other choice. Either I'm going to try to do something about it or I'm going to fucking do it and keep doing it and die. That's
right.
Basically the way I felt. So, I was in the methadone clinic for like 15 months or maybe 18 months, something like that. And, that was a tough time, but that was right around the time when I started discovering all these Ultimate Warrior motivational videos. And I started exercising and stuff around that time. So it was like everything kind of just like came together. It was like, synchronicity. And, man, those videos spoke to me and it just like, it made me realize like the type of guy that he was and what he was about. Cause I never knew any of that stuff, but I just remembered the crazy motherfucker that would come down and shake the ropes and fucking scream and look up at the sky and all that shit. And those videos just spoke to me, man. And I really, really attribute him and those videos to me getting to the point that I'm at now. You know what I mean? Because I was in a real fucking dark place and it was a big hole that I had to crawl out of, you know what I mean? And I did it. And a big part of that was because of those videos.
And you probably were watching the same ones I was because it was like the ones where he's sitting in his gym and he's sitting in his barn, as he called it. And I still recommend those videos, and I have a few of them on a Ultimate Warrior dedication page on MikeMessier.com. I think it's called Warrior Inspiration. And for me, I hear you, man. Because and that story that you just told, that would be something that Warrior would be very happy to hear. Mm-hmm. Because you were probably right in the target of people that he was trying to reach. He often said that he felt like I'm putting words in his mouth a little bit here. I'm paraphrasing my own interpretation. But he was basically saying the people that were responding to him were teenage guys in their 20s, guys in their 30s, and then another group of guys that were like his age or even a little bit older that were watching him when he was wrestling. He wasn't discriminating against women at all, but he was just saying that his energy, the way that he spoke, the words that he used were more receptive from a male-based audience. That being said, a great friend of mine, a lady named Lily Spencer up in New England, she was a big Warrior fan of the videos that I was sharing. So it wasn't that he was discriminating against women from watching his videos. It was just that he kind of knew that the vibe from him was mostly guys, and mostly stories like yours, guys that either, a lot of them were guys with weight issues or guys that were feeling despondent, depressed, maybe had some type of addiction issues going on. And Warrior really was trying to do speeches and videos that connected with people. And I think he was successful. And the reason I think he's successful is because even to this day, 7 years after he passed away. There's Facebook groups like the one that you're in that you invited me to.
Yeah.
There are people still doing the face paint. There's people still talking about him, still wearing the T-shirts. The WWE, for all their transgressions against him and back and forth lawsuits with Warrior and the company, they started the Warrior Award. There's a lot of positive things from this guy. There are some negative things too. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But I get a little hung up when other people get hung up on the negative things because, first of all, the guy's already gone. He's already deceased, so he can't hurt you now. You know what I mean? He's not going to come. He's not going to come into your home and beat you up and gorilla slam you now. He's already deceased. So what's the problem? The other thing is, if you, not you, Gonzo, but those that have an issue with Warrior, you can easily find people that are live and doing public speaking and have social media and YouTube links. And you can find people today on the news or on CNN or on Fox that'll piss you off. If you're looking to be pissed off, you can find someone to piss you off in about 2 seconds. And I'll tell you who to find. I mean, so I just don't get why some wrestling fans especially are so harping on this guy. I guess he did something right if he left that much of an imprint on your soul, right? What do you think, Gonzo?
I mean, I just think that with him, it's kind of like a you love him or you hate him type deal. I don't, meet too many people or talk to too many people where it's in between. Either they're like, oh, I loved Ultimate Warrior. Or they're like, man, that guy sucked or whatever they say. And, I think exactly what you said. It just goes to show the type of impression and the type of connection that he made with people, that he's still so relevant now. And like you saw, I'm sure you saw that video. I think it was like last week, the soccer coach guy or whatever, where they won and he's all freaking out. And then he walks up to the thing and starts doing the thing like he's shaking the ropes. And they asked him after the game, like, oh, a little Ultimate Warrior. And he's like, yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like, he made such an impression on people, and you can't you can't deny that, whether it was bad, whether it was good. He definitely motivated a lot of people. It goes far beyond just you or me. I mean, tons of people, and it's just weird because like that speech that he gave on Raw, that final speech, I mean, it was almost prophetic in a lot of ways, because it was like, obviously he died the next day and everything that he said, but it's so relevant to him, what he said about how, like, he was exiled from the business for whatever it was, like 14 years or something like that. Like, you didn't hear from him. He was gone, and that was it. And for him to come back, and it was similar to the way he would make an entrance. You know what I mean? Like, it's a good like comparison right there, because it was just like, boom, here we go. Ultimate Warrior's back, even though he wasn't wrestling, but you get my point. And they launched a whole merchandise thing for him, all kinds of shit. He was going to be an ambassador, all that stuff. And that also goes to show the type of legacy that he left. That stuff wouldn't have worked if he didn't connect with people. You know what I mean? They wouldn't have a Warrior Award today if he didn't connect with people and didn't inspire people and leave a lasting impression on people. And that's what I take away from it. Like, he has his haters like everybody else. And, I kind of feel like he's in the same category as like Vince Russo or like Jim Cornette or something, where like people like either love him or they fucking hate him. You know what I mean? Like, people really spit hate at both of those guys. And I feel like Warrior kind of was in that category too. The people that really hated him, I bet you if we asked somebody right now that like didn't like him or whatever, they'd be like, man, fuck that guy or whatever, whatever they said. So either way, he made an impression that lasted.
Here's the thing. People often, even I remember back at the time when he was wrestling, there was discussions of the time of the power wrestlers. And it was kind of a breed of guys that, to me, started in full with the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, which unfortunately both of them are now passed away.
Mike, I got to get my charger real quick. Just keep going.
So at the time, the Road Warriors came into professional wrestling in 1983, Georgia Championship Wrestling. They were doing great stuff. They were a power tag team. Then you had guys like Sting and Ultimate Warrior that started off as the Blade Runners. that were directly influenced by the Road Warriors. And you had, of course, Hulk Hogan was a power guy. You had power and muscles. I mean, Lex Luger was probably the epitome of this. This was going on in the 80s, was the big time power guy stuff. When I was a young wrestling fan, I was really into Ric Flair. I didn't know it at the time, but I was a big Magnus Morocco fan. I hated him because he was a great bad guy. But I guess I was, and I started to develop, fanhood for guys like Paul Orndorff, who was a power guy, but also could wrestle. He could also talk. Great athlete, Paul Orndorff. But Ultimate Warrior came around the turn of the decade was when he really hit his peak. I believe it's April 2nd, 1990, right at the turn of the decade, the 90s. The color, here's the action figure from that time, the Hasbro. I mean, this famous figure.
Nice. Nice.
Right. So, I mean, the thing with this guy was such a animated superhero of a guy that was really perfect for the 90s, for the early 90s especially. The MC Hammer, just a lot of stuff was very colorful at that time for a couple of years before grunge kind of kicked in. So Warrior really had that going on, the neons, everything. And I wasn't a huge fan. I wasn't against Warrior. It might have just been because Gonzo, I was more of an NWA fan at that point. So I was more emotionally invested in Sting versus the Four Horsemen and stuff like that. I wasn't opposed to Warrior, but I do remember being a young guy and watching Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 6. And I thought, okay, this is just another way they're going to push Hogan. Hogan's going to beat this guy and take the Intercontinental title because it's kind of wacky, but they were kind of – depends on who you ask, but was this supposed to be title versus title or just Hogan's title in line against the Intercontinental Champion? But in any event, I remember distinctly thinking they're going to let Hogan beat this guy and take the Intercontinental title, and it's just another way to showcase Hogan. And I was legitimately surprised when the Ultimate Warrior beat him. Looking back at it, I should have known better, but I was shocked that Warrior got the victory. And that match, if you dissect it with 2021 eyes and you look at it like you're watching, Kenny Omega in Japan against Okada for an hour, if you compare it like that, it may not work for you. But if you were a young wrestling fan at the time, two baby faces, over-the-top personalities, larger than life, however many fans it was, I think it was 66,000 fans in Toronto Skydome. First time a WrestleMania was outside of the United States. It was rocking. It was huge. It was epic. And the way that WrestleMania began with the mythologies and all the interviews leading up to it, it was something, and you're probably too young to remember that, Gonzo, but for the fans that remember, or if you don't, I encourage you, there's so many YouTube videos you can find or go to the Peacock, watch WrestleMania. You know what? I wouldn't even watch WrestleMania 6 on the Peacock because they've censored out the Piper match. But if you can find yourself a bootleg copy of WrestleMania 6, the way that it was actually presented with all the matches intact, the promos leading up to it, it was pretty awesome. And that match combined with WrestleMania 5, I contend that Warrior versus Rude stole the show at WrestleMania 5. I think it just a little bit edges out Savage Hogan. It's a coin flip. But I think what most people agree is that WrestleMania 7, Ultimate Warrior versus Randy Macho Man Savage, is an excellent match. It ranks up there with any Shawn Michaels match you want to watch. And to me, that would say that, geez, WrestleMania 5, coin flip. Did he have the best match? Flip a coin. You tell me. 6, he had the best match against Hogan. 7, he had the best match against Savage. WrestleMania 8, he's not even booked on the card. He comes out as a surprise guest. We haven't seen him in 6 or 7 months when he comes out for the run-in. So when people want to dismiss his career, I say you're not paying attention to facts. The facts would illustrate the guy was over. He wasn't wrestling like Ric Flair or Arn Anderson or Tully Blanchard. He was wrestling the way that he got himself over, and it worked. And people have a real problem with that when you present facts to them that they can't argue with. Even in the world of wrestling, they get upset. What do you think, Gonzo?
Well, actually, it's kind of crazy because I never thought about it like that. And I heard you say that, whatever, a month ago or something, maybe on one of your videos or in the Ultimate Warrior group. And I was like, wow, I never really thought about that. How, he kind of did basically have the 3 best matches of the 3 WrestleManias that he was in. And he definitely got the biggest pop of WrestleMania 8. That place went nuts when he came out. And, it's like everything was just so larger than life with him. It's very similar to the way it was with Hogan. Like, it was just so fucking larger than life. And me being like a little kid at the time, I remember like not knowing how to feel when I watched the match at WrestleMania 6. Because when I was a kid, I loved Hogan and fucking Warrior. And it was like, I don't even know how to feel. Like, what the hell? Like, I'm happy and sad at the same time, I guess, And, but it's like looking back at it, like kind of like you said, through, not necessarily for me a 2020 scope or whatever, but just like being older and wiser and just not seeing the wrestling in that period at the same way I did when I was just a little kid. It's like it even just solidifies even more like how fucking over he was and how larger than life that at least WrestleMania 6, but probably even all those matches. I mean, his entire career, that time frame, that period of wrestling, everything just had to be so larger than life. And that's what it was in the 80s. You know what I mean? Like the 80s, everything had to be larger than life. And I think that you really can't dismiss his career. And people will say like, oh, the good matches he had is because the other guy carried him or whatever. And it's like, man, if I sit here and think about it for a few minutes, I could probably come up with a long list of guys that are super over, Hall of Fame guys, whatever, Hogan being one of them, that only had used a few moves. They didn't use that many moves. And the thing is with Warrior, like, it's not like he had not that many moves. And it's not really like that with anybody. That's just what people want to say. But like, oh, he can't work or whatever. I don't know. The matches that I watched, Warrior sold for people, unless it was like a squash match, he sold really well for people. And some of his matches, I mean, had some really good wrestling in it. I'm not saying he was the fucking greatest wrestler. And to me, that doesn't even fucking matter. I don't care really how good somebody can wrestle. It's about the stories. It's about the fucking, the presentation and how interesting or larger than life or, how much it sucks you into it, like how invested you're going to be in it. Like that's the stuff that always drew me to wrestling. It was never about, can that guy do like a triple double moonsault or can this guy do a, standing fucking brain buster and hold the guy up there for 2 minutes and, switch out into something else. Like, I don't care about that shit. You know what I mean? I don't care if the guy has 4 moves, if it's a good story and the match tells a good story, cool, whatever. I don't care. And that's the thing. Warrior didn't need that many moves. You know what I mean? He had more moves than what people want to give him credit for. Right. Just go back and watch his matches and you'll see. You know what I mean? He wasn't as limited as what people want to say he was. But he didn't need that many moves. Hogan didn't need that many moves. You know what I mean? It was a different fucking time, and way different than it is now, obviously. But everything was about the story that they told in the ring back then. It's not like that anymore, but that's what it was back then.
Yeah, I don't think John Cena had that many moves. I mean, people even gave him the meme, 5 moves of doom. And to be honest, a lot of guys now are very happy with Roman Reigns as a heel, but how many moves does he have? The Superman punch and the spear and that apron thing that he does. And I think Jake the Snake Roberts has told the story many times that Jake the Snake learned, keep your moves to like six moves. And it seems kind of ridiculous to hear these guys say that sometimes, because I'm like, you can't wrestle a whole match with 6 moves. But I think that's kind of even from his part, it's a generalization, but it's kind of like signature moves. You want to have these signature moves that people respond to. There's some life lessons in that for all of life, to be honest with you, whether it's as a content creator or whatever. I find myself struggling with that, Gonzo, because I like to write, screenplays of different ilks, but it's hard to, even for myself, to pigeonhole myself. I'm not a horror writer per se, but I have written horror. I'm not a guy who writes kids movies, but I have written a kid's story. So, who's to say, right?
Yeah.
I guess we'll get into something here, the controversies, because I did label this video the controversies, and I don't want to just do a whole blowhard, two Ultimate Warrior fans, shaking our ropes here.
Yeah.
Also, just interesting, you mentioned that football thing. Notice that they didn't say, hey, was that a tribute to Dave Bautista? And the guy didn't say, oh, yeah, I'm a huge Batista fan. Batista took the shaking of the ropes. Batista was doing that in 2004 to 2006 or 7. And hi, All About Wrestling podcast says, hey, guys, how you doing today? Good
How's
to see
it going?
you. If you have any thoughts or comments or questions about our Ultimate Warrior conversation, All About Wrestling podcast, feel free to leave another comment. We'll see if we can incorporate them. But no one said to the football coach, hey, you were shaking the ropes like Dave Bautista. They were saying about the Ultimate Warrior who came 18 years before Batista. So there you go. The controversies we can get into, and we will get into, around, I want to say 2007, maybe a little bit later, Warrior started experimenting with YouTube. I think, my opinion, my theory, I could be wrong, I think this was a reaction to the DVD that the WWE did, the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. I think the Warrior was angry. I think he felt betrayed by the wrestling company, by the McMahons on a personal level, maybe by Linda especially, because he called her mom, apparently. He released his anger about that situation. In my theory, I could be wrong, he took it out on the world. And who did the world consist of? At the time, Heath Ledger had passed away at a young age, having recently played having recently played the Joker in a Batman film. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even Heath Ledger's last performance, by the way. A lot of people don't realize that. Heath Ledger had gone on to film another movie before he passed away. So, people convolute and condense stories to make it more interesting. Well, the Warrior had some things to say about that. He had some things at one of the Connecticut schools. He was a guest speaker. He said some things that were he was kind of put into a corner, to be honest with you, because
he was.
Some of those kids didn't want him to be there in the first place. Gonzo, do you want to speak on? Because I saw your video and you had some interesting things to say about that. Do you have anything to say about that stuff?
Yeah. Obviously, he did say some controversial stuff, and I agree with you. I definitely tend to agree with you. I think that he was just in a really dark place probably at the time, and he couldn't believe that they were just trying to blackball him and disenfranchise him like that, and just completely write away his career like it wasn't shit and like he was nothing and he sucked. And I think that really bothered him, and he probably did take it out on the world. But in regards to that UConn thing, which I believe was in like 2005, I think, there was a group of, I'm assuming it was students that were passing out a flyer outside before he was going to do the speech. And it was basically just like, a huge paper just slandering him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm assuming they were probably liberal students because he was conservative, and they were slandering him. And I saw there's a little documentary on YouTube. You could probably go find it. It's has a whole piece in there about that UConn speech, and it has like behind the scenes type footage. Somebody that was probably with him that had a camera, and they gave him the paper. Like somebody brought it in and said, "Dude, this is what they're passing around outside, just so you know."
Right.
And he laughed okay. So he already went in there with his guard up because he knew okay, this is what they're doing. And it seemed like when you see the speech, the first maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes of it, it doesn't really go that bad per se. But as it went on, more and more people just started to heckle him. You know what I mean? They were literally heckling the shit out of him, screaming while he's trying to talk, all this other stuff. And I think he just kind of snapped. You know what I mean? I just think he was like, all right, I fucking had enough, and now I'm going to give it back to you. And I don't agree with all the stuff that he said. You know what I mean? I could see how people would fucking be offended by that or whatever. But come on, haven't we all said fucking stupid shit that we regret? haven't we all fucking made a comment or maybe even had a belief that eventually we realized, like, damn, I was wrong about that. You know what I mean? Or I definitely shouldn't have said that. That was fucked up of me. We all do that. And we do it all the time throughout our whole life. That's the only way you grow as a person. That's the only way you learn. So people just want to harp on that shit because it's really the only thing that they have on. You know what I mean? You can say he's a shitty wrestler. You can say whatever you want, but the fucking numbers don't lie. You know, he was a top merchandise seller, 3 best matches in the 3 WrestleManias he was in. He got some of the loudest pops and the biggest pops I've ever seen. And he connected with people. You can find people anywhere in any type of wrestling community that are going to have an affinity for the Ultimate Warrior, and they're going to love the Ultimate Warrior. So, you know, it's just, yeah, people grasp at straws, I feel like, when they bring up like that shit that he said, because it's like, yeah, I mean, we all make mistakes, don't we? They love Hulk Hogan. They love Hulk Hogan now, again, don't they? You know what I mean? So it's like, come on.
It's what I call it, and I did a video on this 3 or 4 years ago, Gonzo, was convenient morality. You know, if we like someone, whether it's a celebrity or someone in their own life, we'll find a reason to defend them. If we don't like somebody, we'll find a reason to attack them or to crucify them. Warrior also, guys like Jim Ross and Bruce Pritchard have gleefully taken pot shots at Warrior. I can understand from a perspective that Bruce Pritchard, more than Jim Ross, has a reason to gripe, because apparently they did this segment where Ultimate Warrior's character ended the reign of Brother Love.
Yeah.
And according to Bruce, Warrior took some liberties with him physically and ended up breaking his jaw. And I guess Bruce was wanting Hulk Hogan to be the guy to do the honors of ending Brother Love. And Vince or whoever said, no, it's going to be Warrior because he's the champion right now. I can understand being pissed about that, to be honest with you. If I was someone who physically, and not picking on Bruce Pritchard here, but if I was someone in his physical condition, being, you know, a chubbier guy without the muscle, that probably felt like he was taken advantage of physically, I would be pissed too. Jim Ross, I have a little bit more of a problem with, because I don't quite see what Warrior ever did to Jim Ross. And if you look at some of the people that Jim Ross has worked with, no offense, but including the Jeff Hardys and guys that have had issues that have seeped into their matches, what's the problem with a guy wanting to sell his comic book? You know, I thought Jim Ross was always, you know, or the mentality is go out there and get yourself over, sell your merch, but don't upset the apple cart. Don't be bigger than the promotion. There's a lot, in my opinion, is a lot of these guys in professional wrestling, especially guys that have worked with the WWE, get into this childlike mentality where they put Vince McMahon Jr. on a pedestal as a father figure, and they feel that they have to sing his praises all the time, and Vince is a genius and blah, 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 at the expense of A, telling the truth 100%, and B, taking the workers' side of the equation. They always seem to put over the promotion because they all want a job. They all want either a job or to be put in that Hall of Fame, or not to have a Bret Hart Screwed DVD come out, or an Ultimate Warrior, the Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior DVD come out at some point. So I guess I just have an issue with some of these wrestlers who for one reason or another have an issue with Ultimate Warrior and don't truly understand why the guy was over and don't want to give him the credit that he deserves.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. And it's like, it's interesting to be talking about this now, considering they just did the biography on him. They did the Dark Side of the Ring. So, of course, in conjunction with that, YouTube videos are going to come out where guys say, hey, they just, you know, had the Ultimate Warrior biography on TV, and they're going to ask this legend about the Ultimate Warrior. So there's this influx of videos that have come out on YouTube too, probably over the past 6 months or whatever. And it's like, yeah, some of these guys are, you know, just talking shit about him. Like Jake the Snake, for instance, obviously he said that, you know, they talked and they hashed it out, and he felt bad that he ever said anything negative about him. You know, he saw him with his family and said like, wow, this guy has really changed. And that's cool and stuff. But like what Jake the Snake was saying, if you look at the facts, none of it lines up. None of it lines up. He said in that Dark Side of the Ring that he hadn't seen Warrior until the Hall of Fame, since like 91 or whatever. And even going back to then, Warrior wasn't champion at SummerSlam 91. Like he said, they were supposed to go into the program for the belt. And in 96, he was in WWF with Ultimate Warrior. And in 1993, they did some wrestling gimmick in fucking Germany, I think. No, they did a show in Germany, and then Greg Valentine was talking about a card that they were on in 93, and it was Jake the Snake, him, and Warrior, I think in Australia or Austria. So it's like Jake's story doesn't add up.
Right.
And that's the thing, too. Like, Vince Russo talks about this all the time, about how, like, these guys remember these things and it's all fucked up. And I mean, I think we all do it, but it just seems like it's like really prevalent and like a light is shown down on it in wrestling, because you have all these nostalgia videos and guys doing interviews and legends and all this other stuff, and people want to talk about when wrestling was great in the fucking 80s and 90s and 70s even. And it's just like these guys, it seems like they fucking don't remember shit the way it really happened. You know what I mean? And it's just it's like revisionist history.
Revisionist history. I'll hop in a little bit and reinforce your point. Jake the Snake Roberts was saying on that dark side of the ring that he was upset with Warrior leaving the company after SummerSlam 91 because of the money dispute, because Jake the Snake was scheduled for a series of title matches with the Ultimate Warrior after SummerSlam, and Jake the Snake was going to get the title off of the Ultimate Warrior and finally be the world champion. Problem is, Jake the Snake, Ultimate Warrior was not the champion at SummerSlam 91, nor for several months before that. He had lost the title in January of 91 to Slaughter, who then lost to Hogan, and at SummerSlam 91, Hogan was the champ. Was Jake the Snake going to beat Hogan? We don't think so. Cornette has said that they wouldn't trust Jake the Snake because of all his problems. They wouldn't trust him with a title run. At the time, somewhere around there, 90 or 91, Jake the Snake had some type of arrest, some type of situation, which I think is how they got him into the Ted DiBiase thing. Ted DiBiase supposedly injured Jake the Snake's neck. That was just written in there to give Jake time off for his legal trouble. I'm not sure what you mean by terrible booking. All About podcast. Mr. Spade said hi, Mr. Spade.
What's up?
And but I'm not sure what All About is talking about with the terrible booking. Sometimes, folks, just so you know, there's a little bit of a delay by the time you make a comment, by the time we see it. Sometimes it could be a minute or 30 seconds. We might have talked so fast that it's hard for me to know exactly what you mean. So just for your comments, be a little more specific if you don't mind. But keep them coming. Keep the comments coming. Warrior in WCW was an interesting thing. There's a fun video which has been taken out of context. Warrior is I'm just trying to defend the guy right now, folks. So if someone else wants to attack the guy, go ahead. I'm going to take this opportunity to defend some of these nuances for hardcore wrestling fans who know what I'm talking about. There's a video going around on YouTube. The questioner, the interviewer, brings up the Renegade, which was a WCW knockoff Ultimate Warrior in 1995. And Warrior smiles and laughs and says, oh, yeah, that guy committed suicide too. And then they start to talk about the Renegade. Now, people, knee-jerk reaction is understandable. Oh, my God, this guy is laughing that the Renegade committed suicide. Not necessarily. If you've seen the entire video, which I have, what you see is that there's this common thread in the conversation that many top pro wrestlers had died at young ages. And they're basically the two people, the interviewer and Warrior, are getting to the point where you have to laugh, otherwise you're going to start crying. When all your peers, and I think I could be wrong, but I think they talked about the Von Erichs and Rick Rude and other guys. Louis Spicoli. I don't know if they mentioned him directly, but a lot of guys had passed away, Mr. Perfect and so forth. And so when the interviewer brings up the Renegade, Warrior laughs. And he says, another guy who died. Because basically he's saying, how many of my peers have died? It's unbelievable. He's making a comparison that they say that I'm the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior guy. Yet I'm still alive. I got a wife and two kids, and I'm living in a place in Arizona doing my art and working out and looking good. So that is my defense, my explanation of why he's laughing when the guy brings up the renegade committing suicide. I don't think he's spitting on the guy's grave. I think he's what's that thing with pirates or the gallows humor? Is that the term? Like pirates humor or gallows humor?
Yeah, I think I've heard that before, but I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, you have to laugh or else you're going to cry. I mean, and it's kind of like I'll give you a real hardcore example. A friend of mine's wife worked as a nurse with developmentally disabled people whose, you know, motor skills, IQs were affected and so forth. And the way she came home from work one day, she was very tired. She went right to their bedroom, and my friend, you know, looked at me and said, "Oh man, is your wife okay?" My friend said, "Well, she's been, as she says, working with the Doobies all day. She's exhausted." I said, "What's the Doobies?" I'm thinking the Doobie Brothers. I'm thinking, is this a marijuana reference? What are you talking about? The Doobies are the disabled people. The developmentally disabled people is what my friend's wife and her coworkers, not that she invented this term, they would call the people doobies, the doobies, because in order to go to work and deal with these people that have really tough issues, their motor skills, like they need help going to the bathroom, they can't speak as well as the rest of us, they can't eat without help. The staff is referring to these folks as the doobies because it's a gallows humor. It's the way that the staff has a shorthand because it's such a hard job. It's not that they don't care for these people. It's not that they're inhumane to them. It's that in order to get through the very day of work, they have to have a little nickname for humor amongst themselves. That's how they survive. That's how they get through it. Now we can sit here and judge and say, oh my God, that's offensive and horrible. And maybe it is. But I'm not the one doing the job. I'm sitting here doing a podcast about wrestling with the Gonzo. So my point is, when Warrior laughs that one of his colleagues, the Renegade, has passed away at a young age, but you got to remember 30, 40, 50 of his friends and colleagues have passed away at a young age. He's laughing because it's easier to laugh than to cry. So I want to get back to All About Podcast, dropping the world title to Jake Roberts without an actual character buildup. Okay. That's like the misunderstood Allen Iverson comment practice. So let's go to All About Wrestling Podcast. By all means, put up another comment with your link, like your www or something, so we know where to find you. Perhaps it's on YouTube, but just give us information where people can find you. So that's like the misunderstood Allen Iverson comment practice, where he or she is making reference to, is Allen Iverson practice? We're talking about practice, not this game that I love, but practice. But what happened was Allen Iverson missed a practice because one of his friends had just died. So people get hung up on the humor of Iverson saying, practice? We're talking about practice? But meanwhile, he's mourning the loss of a friend. And then the podcast, the All About Wrestling podcast, says, dropping the world title of Jake Roberts without an actual character build-up. You're right. And the other thing was, Jake and Warrior were doing like a feud thing with the snake pit and all that good stuff. But it's just like Gonzo was saying, and Vince Russo says, too many chair shots to the head, too many different towns, too many different women, too many different pills. It's like a Bob Seger song for these guys, that their brains are scrambled through the blows to the head and just too much. I mean, especially the 80s and 90s and the 70s, maybe not so much now. But if you're going to expect that, you know, Harley Race can tell you every single story he ever did, every single, you know what I mean? These guys had too much stuff going on. And that's why when you see a guy like Jake the Snake on national television kind of embarrass himself to people that are paying attention, the real fault, in my opinion, lies with the guys that produced that show, The Dark Side of the Ring. If they actually knew their stuff, or if they just showed that episode to someone like me, or someone who actually has a good memory for this stuff, they would have said, nope, Jake's wrong. He was not going to get the title from Warrior because Warrior didn't have the title. Oh, boy. I get off on these tangents, buddy. But let's get back to more of the positive stuff. I think we've covered these controversies. Unless there's any other controversy of Warrior that you want to get into, Gonzo, go ahead.
I just want to throw in a little side note real quick, and then we can just move right on. But you brought up, about the pirate humor and like what he said. And there's an interesting other thing that happened where you can find this on YouTube. After the tragic fucking Chris Benoit deal in 2007 or whenever that happened, Fox News had Warrior on there. And of course, their narrative is this guy did this because of steroids. And they're trying to tell that story no matter fucking what. And you know how Warrior is. He's not going to fucking play to the narrative when he doesn't believe like that's what actually happened. So, he's basically like giving it back. It was actually Sean Hannity that was interviewing him. And he's just giving it right back to Sean Hannity saying like, no, dude, that's not what I fucking think. And Sean Hannity keeps trying to say, oh, so, you don't think it was the steroids? And, Warrior's like, what about guys like Arnold and like this guy and that guy? They did tons of steroids. They're still around today. He's like, it's all the other stuff. He's like, these guys are taking the steroids to make themselves look good on the outside, but then they're taking a bunch of other shit that's rotting them on the inside. And he made a comment, something like, he said, for me to believe that, I would have to not believe all the autopsy reports of all these wrestlers because of all the different shit they found inside of them. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think he was definitely a guy that was very affected by seeing that many of his peers die from drugs or whatever it was. And it just goes right along with what you said. He probably was like very upset in the video you're talking about. And he was very upset in this Fox News thing where it's like, no, you're not getting it. It's like these guys are fucking doing shit. And it's obvious it's probably because of how demanding fucking Junior is. You know what I mean? And how demanding of a schedule they used to work and all that stuff. And it's probably still fucking demanding, today. Maybe not as bad as it was then, but I mean, these guys felt like they had to turn to something, and I think Warrior saw that and he knew like a lot of these guys were troubled and it was sad to see him die.
And for those that don't know, just the airline schedule that those guys had back in the 80s and 90s, no cell phones. The wrestlers were more or less responsible for getting themselves to town. And sometimes even the travel didn't make much sense. There was a joke that I think Cornette and other guys talk about where, the matchmaker would have a map on the wall and he had like a dartboard, like he's throwing darts. Like instead of saying, okay, let's work the Southeast, you know what I mean? Like instead of working Florida and work our way up to Georgia and then the Carolinas and then, Virginia, we're gonna go boom, 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 boom. And so these guys are they're staying in tip top shape, whether it was through the use of supplemental steroids or human growth or whatever. They're still in pretty damn good shape for guys that are probably not getting a whole lot of sleep and so forth. I'm trying to think if there's another Warrior controversy. I mean, look, hey, some of the stuff he said was incorrect, politically incorrect, emotionally incorrect, wasn't very nice. He said it, and what can you do? I mean, it just is what it is. And it certainly doesn't trump the good stuff that he said. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't trump all that stuff. Yeah, and that's what I want to get back to because we started off strong with that. Maybe we didn't explore. I think you did pretty well. I'm not sure if I did. Sometimes it's hard for me to articulate stuff like that. But I can tell you that in the summer of 2011 is when I started seeing these videos. And I remember showing the Karma is about to collect video to someone. And it wasn't even a wrestling fan. A middle-aged woman with kids watched this whole thing and was pretty intrigued. And then I remember just kind of watching all those videos and getting so jacked up every time the videos would come out and I would share them. And, here we go. My buddy Nerd Street podcast. 90s wrestling was an entirely different animal. I recently guest spotted on the Nerd Street podcast with my buddy there. And Mr. Spades, how you doing, man? Feel free to put the link.
Nice.
Let's see.
Follow you right now, man.
Dangerous Jobbers podcast. So yeah, the whole he's talking about the map with the target thing. For me, here's where to put it. I was in a state, Rhode Island. I was doing okay, but not great. And watching these Warrior videos were kind of a reminder and a kick in the ass to get going. Meaning that my health, my life, my mood, it was all up to me. And it wouldn't be for a couple of years later when things started to break for me personally that I could really start doing stuff about it on a higher level. But at the time, the Warrior videos were a big deal. And I remember one of his life lessons, so to speak, was you need to shut it down. And what he was saying was the social media, the Twitter, the Facebook, everything. He said, if you have kids, if you have a wife, it might be a little bit different. For the single guys out there, he's saying, take a journal, a pen, a paper. But he's basically saying, take a blank writing journal and a pen and a piece of paper and go somewhere where you can be alone with no distractions, no computers, no phones. And this is all pretty mind-blowing stuff for people today. I got to go somewhere without my phone for 3 hours?
Yeah.
What if someone calls me? What if someone texts me? Because blah, blah, blah might text me or blah, blah. He's saying, put your fucking phone down and you got to go somewhere and you got to sit there and write. You got to pour it all out. What you want to do with your life, what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? He didn't have some Tony Robbins type of, breakdown. And I've done the Tony Robbins stuff too. Warrior was simplifying it. He was saying, go somewhere with a piece of, a blank journal and a pen, no fucking distractions, and write for at least 3 hours. This is one of the hardest things that anybody can do, whether you're a professional writer or not. I'm a professional writer. This is hard for me to do because when you're not, go ahead.
No, I'm a writer too. And, for 3-4 years, I was writing for Russo's brand. And, I did some writing for Bill Apter and stuff like that, some other wrestling websites. And man, it's tough to pay attention nowadays because I feel like all of us as a society, our attention spans have been shrunk. You know what I mean? Because there's so many different things happening at once. This, your cell phone, all these apps, everything's about, seeing what other people are doing in their life and Facebook and all this stuff. And it's just I feel like as a society, our attention spans have really been shrunk. And I try to exercise that. I try to, and it's hard. That's the thing. It's hard. It's hard to fucking put this thing down a lot of times. You know what I mean? But it's at least be conscious of it. I know that for a fact. I'm conscious of it. So I can step away for a second and be like, whoa, I got to put this thing down. But a lot of people don't do that. And there's a whole generation of people being raised right now. And over the past 10 years or whatever, kids and now teenagers and young adults that think that this is it. This is all there is. This is the way life is. There was nothing before this. There's always been cell phones. This is how you live. You know what I mean? There's a million apps. There's a million different things, that they just, people have been dumbed down.
They've been dumbed down, and it's like a higher brain power. My buddy Abdul, Mr. Spades from the Nerd Street podcast, is a funny line. If Warrior and Jake were on the roster now, they would be cut for budget cuts, and we would get 45-minute bushwhacker matches.
That's good. That's good.
All About Wrestling's got a Preach Gonzo. He's got some love there from All About Wrestling podcast. And here's the deal, man. You're right. And Warrior was trying to get. He said his advice about weightlifting: go to a gym, move heavy shit around, and leave. And he said that people would always take issue when he gave that advice. What do you mean? You're not telling me. Go to a gym, move heavy shit around, and leave.
I remember in one of the videos, he's like, "Yeah, you're fucking tired. You just got out of work. Who gives a fuck? Pull that fucking car into the fucking parking lot and go in there in your street clothes. Lift the weights in your fucking street clothes." And it's just he was that, no bullshit, no excuses. You know what I mean? And I think that we all have something to gain from that. We should always all be reminded of that because we all make excuses and we all procrastinate and we all could do better all the time. I feel like anybody at any point in their life, anybody at any point in the world could always be doing better. You're never going to hit perfection, but you can always be doing better. And that's what he was about. You know, don't fucking make excuses. Don't succumb to Mr. Resistance, as he called it, Mr. Resistance. He's like, you got to punch that motherfucker in the mouth, and you got to fucking do your shit. You got to do what you know what's right for your fucking mind, your body, and your soul. And that resonated with me, like, on a level that I never fucking thought it would, or, you know what I mean? That stuff just really hit me, all those videos, and no excuses, no bullshit. You know what I mean? Just fucking do it.
Right. And you know, that piece of advice, that sliver of advice he gave about going to the gym with the street clothes, I actually took that into to heart, because I remember I lived by a YMCA at the time, and when I would drive by it, you know, and sometimes I'd be going somewhere, and sometimes I'd be coming back from somewhere. But hearing what Warrior said about just going to the gym with your street clothes, I started to do that. Because sometimes the thing that slows you down about going to the gym is, okay, I got to pack a duffel bag with a fucking change of clothes. I better have a bottle of water. Maybe I should have a protein drink. Otherwise, I won't get all my fucking protein in, and this workout will be for nothing, and I'll tear my muscle down, and I won't have the protein to build it back up. Well, fuck, I better have a better T-shirt. I better have a backup T-shirt, because if I go to the gym and I get sweaty, God forbid, I'm walking around sweaty, I might stink.
I remember. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The point is, with Warrior's thought, I started doing that more. I started saying, okay, I'm headed from here to there, but on the way, I'm driving by this gym. Even if I get in there for 10 minutes, if I pull into the parking lot, it takes me 30 seconds, takes me another 30 seconds to zap myself in with the keychain. I say hi to somebody at the counter. I go in, I can do the lat pull down, and maybe I can do a leg press, or maybe I can do some shoulder shrugs. Even if I'm going to be, and I started doing this, Gonzo, I remember at the time, I was actually in a weight loss class, a class that met once a week for weight loss. And I would remember hearing these middle-aged women in the class. Most of them were women in the class, and a lot of them had kids, several kids, some of them, and were working day jobs. And these women, I couldn't believe that they were pretty obese, but still doing a lot of stuff. But for all the stuff they were doing, chasing after the kids, slicing the oranges, working their day jobs, dealing with their husbands that the spark had run out, and trying to lose weight, they never had the time to go to the gym. Now, I'm a single guy, a couple of years younger than these ladies, and I'm thinking I've got no excuse. If these women are chasing after kids and careers and husbands that don't love them or don't pay attention to them, I've got no excuse as a single guy to not pull over to the gym and get even a 10-minute workout in. And I remember telling a buddy of mine, Gonzo, that I would do that. I'd pull over in my jeans and T-shirt, whatever I was wearing, go into the gym and do a 10-minute workout, even if it was one exercise. And then I would leave and go about my business. It wasn't the greatest workout of the week. It wasn't the greatest workout of the month, but it was keeping the muscle memory alive, keeping the mental mojo going, that this is part of my routine. I remember going one time, getting to the weight loss class late because you got penalized. If you didn't get to the weight loss class, you lost money, right? So I remember being in the gym. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get to that class 20 minutes late, but I'm going to squeeze this exercise session in, get to the class late, and that way at least I can go to the class and, yeah, I exercised today. You know what I mean? So the point that Warrior was saying, look, not everyone's going to have the physique of an Ultimate Warrior or a Roman Reigns or a Sting or a John Cena or Seth Rollins, or on the female side, not everyone's going to look like Charlotte or Sasha Banks with the ripped abs. There's always going to be people on television that look fantastic, and maybe the regular folks don't look that great, and that's fine. But we can all lose 10 to 20 pounds, 30 pounds, depends on who you are. And Warrior, to me, was a real inspiring force behind all that. If you see this photo, behind you, obviously there's two guys. Warrior's older than me, and, he's in better shape, clearly. But you can see we're having a great time. He knew who I was when I went to meet him because I'd written him a couple of emails, and so he recognized me from the emails. It was just cool to meet him, and I feel that he was a positive guy. There was one thing that I keep forgetting to mention. On the dark side of the ring, I believe it was his ex-girlfriend or his ex-wife who mentioned that Warriors, was it his father had died from a heart attack at age 65?
Yeah.
And wasn't she saying that Warrior was always afraid of dying at a young age? Was that something that happened, Gonzo?
I believe that happened, but I remember for sure in the A&E documentary, his mom was on there, and his mom was saying all the Hellwig boys died young, and was talking about how his father died young, and maybe his uncle or something, maybe his grandfather. But I remember her making that specific comment saying all of the Hellwig boys died young.
Right. And so the reason just to bring that up is that people, the knee-jerk reaction of the common people is say, oh, Warrior died, must have been steroids he did in the 80s.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Some people just have family genetics that 65 or 60 or 55 is about all you get. Yeah. And so instead of pointing the finger of blame that he died young, and I think some people want to use that, oh, he died young. He was in great shape. He worked out at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever. Therefore, since he died at a relatively young age, I won't do what he did. To me, you're missing the point that he would make, I think, which is he made the most of the time that he had.
Yeah. And we should all do that.
Right. And I remember in a joking way, but going back and forth on social media with a friend of mine who was a theater guy. And the guy was not a wrestling fan, but he knew just enough about wrestling to be dangerous, because whenever I'd post the wrestling Ultimate Warrior videos, he'd make mention of the Yukon speech or whatever. And I basically said, hey, man, the next time you ply your trade in front of 66,000 fans and on worldwide pay-per-view, let me know. And I'll be there to watch that, which never happened and probably never will. And probably won't ever happen for me either. But the point is, a lot of people are quick to – we have a real issue in our world, especially the United States, but the world too, maybe even worse in the UK, which is we love to raise celebrities to godlike value and prestige just so we can crucify them later on. Whether it's the royal family, Princess Diana getting hunted down by the paparazzi, whether it's Britney Spears or whoever else, we love, I think it was the Eagles that said, kick them when they're up, kick them when they're down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gonzo. I'll get off my high horse for a minute. You take it over for a moment. Go ahead.
No, I mean, and actually, in the group that we're in, the Ultimate Warrior group, somebody posted a video in there. It's a doctor that I believe was in another country, maybe in Europe or in Australia or something like that. That was a huge Ultimate Warrior fan, and actually went over the whole autopsy on the video. And basically what that guy was saying was he didn't even die from a heart attack. He had like a heart aneurysm, I believe, where like blood was something about like blood he had the aneurysm and then blood was like pooling in his heart or something like that, and that's basically what killed him. But I mean, and that's another point too, is like he didn't really look that well. His appearance on Raw and just all of the backstage video that's out there from the Hall of Fame and WrestleMania 30 and everything like that. It looked like all that stuff happening so fast. He's going back to WWE. He's confronting, McMahon again or Junior again. He's confronting fucking all these people that have had beef with him and trying to reconcile all these things and get over all that stuff internally, the self-destruction DVD, all that stuff. And then coupled with now, you're going to fly here, you're going to fly there, then you're going to fly to the Hall of Fame, you do the thing there, then you're going to be at WrestleMania, then you're going to fly to Raw. And it just seemed like all that stuff really just took a toll on him right at the last minute. He probably, he obviously already had an issue before that. Something like that doesn't just happen overnight. Obviously he must have had heart issues before that where like that maybe he probably didn't know about it.
Right.
And, but it's interesting because that's what that doctor said is like he didn't even have a heart attack. It wasn't just a heart attack.
it was something that he might have been born with, and just from the moment he was born, he just had a shorter lifespan than the rest of us, or than many of us. And All About Wrestling podcast kind of reinforces your point. It was so strange that he passed away so close after his Hall of Fame speech. My theory on that, too, to supplement what you just said, Gonzo, is that I feel I'm not blaming WWE. I'm not blaming anybody for this. I'm just saying that the rush of emotions that came from that weekend of you've been, not Warrior was away from the company for what, 15, 20 years before that. And here he's coming back to see these people that he hasn't seen in years. And he's shaking hands with Junior. He's seeing Hogan, all these things that are happening, that maybe a rush of emotions that were great, that they could settle those things up or at least open the doors to conversations. I remember Ted DiBiase saying that he feels he kicks himself in the butt now because he didn't talk to Warrior that weekend, and he feels like he missed an opportunity to settle up with him. But just my point is, maybe there was an emotional toll on Warrior's spirit that had a detrimental effect that led to him passing away too. But that's different than blaming anyone. I'm just saying maybe the rush of emotions caused some inner problems with his system. That's all.
Well, stress too, bro. Stress. I mean, you don't think that was stressful to go through all that stuff? You know what I mean? Like everything that we just talked about, that whole weekend, all that stuff had to be stressful. Overcoming all those, skeletons in his closet, basically within the wrestling business, making amends with Junior, making amends with this guy, making amends with that guy, somehow accepting that they completely blackballed me and tried to destroy my legacy and my career, but now they want me back and they want to praise me and put me in the Hall of Fame. All of that stuff had to bring upon a tremendous amount of stress on the guy. So, the emotions, the stress, I mean, it had to be a lot. It would be a lot for me. I mean, I know that, and I'm sure you'd probably say the same thing. It'd be a lot for you.
Be a lot for anybody. And it was weird, that final speech on Raw. It's foreboding, it's a little creepy, it's kind of inspiring, it's everything. Like, it's so emotional. And just to me, the fact that he's wearing that kind of plastic Ultimate Warrior mask is a little weird to me. And to be honest with you, him going back to the WWE for that weekend, there was something that seemed off-putting to me as a hardcore 2011, 2012 Ultimate Warrior fan, because the issues that he raised with how he was treated, how they treat others, how the wrestling business works in general, at least at that time, it was surprising that here he is coming back. All About agrees. That was very strange. It just seemed like an odd thing that after all the, not to say you can't forgive and forget and move on, but it just seemed like it kind of come out a little out of nowhere without some public reconciliation. And then his Hall of Fame speech, I thought Warrior did an admirable job of addressing those issues with the DVD and other stuff. And he suggested an award for the behind-the-scenes people at WWE. They kind of took that in a different direction. They made it more for like people outside the company, which is fine. I mean, they gave it to Connor the Crusher, the kid that was sick, and it was good. I feel like his younger daughter, I believe, is the one that loves wrestling. And she's like a little kid. I mean, I guess time flies quick because now she's 7 years older than she was when her father passed away. But I guess she's already training to be in the WWE. You know what I mean? So they're looking at her as a legacy act, like Rock's daughter is already in NXT. So, for those, I guess I'll make this kind of a biting comment, but we've come this far with it. For those that don't like the Ultimate Warrior, why are you still watching WWE? Because they've employed his widow and they're going to start promoting his daughter. And you know that she's going to have some type of Warrior tie-in. If they're any type of intelligence, they'd have some type of tie-in with her and her father. So if you are really that adamant about your own beliefs about this guy, why are you still watching WWE is what I would ask those folks.
I totally agree. And I also think that, my theory on it is that, and I don't want to speak for people in a sense of like what their true intentions were, because I don't really fucking know. But my theory on it is that some part of that, bringing him back, Hall of Fame, all that stuff, the Warrior Award, all of it, some part of that had to do with money, in my opinion. They knew that they could make money off this guy for the next 200 years if they wanted to. If WWE was in business for another 200 years, they would probably still sell merchandise that's Ultimate Warrior for 200 years. They could play clips and vignettes of his career and tell people basically go watch his stuff or whatever, and create new fans 100 years after the guy's dead, because that's how impactful his character was. And I think that was a part of it. They just knew, like, we can make, like, same thing with Hogan. When Hogan dies, WWE will be able to make tons of money for years after he's gone. John Cena, tons of money for years after he's gone. And I think that definitely played a part in it. And I don't want to speak for people's intentions, because, maybe they really did want to make amends with the guy, and maybe Junior did really love him to an extent, and Linda loved him to an extent. I don't fucking know. But I do know, looking at what WWE is, looking at all the releases that they've done recently, the budget cuts, all this stuff, it's like, do they really have that much compassion? I mean, do they really? It's hard. It's hard to say. It's hard to say when you see them do great things for some people, but then you see this other shit that they do that's just awful. That they've been doing really for years now, just awful. So, I believe that had a part to play in it. They knew they could make money off that guy.
Yeah, well, it makes me think, hey, people are making money off of Beethoven's music. And I went to an Edgar Allan Poe museum in October of 2020, and Edgar Allan's not getting anything out of that. I mean, but this estate, and whoever it is, they're selling tours to the Edgar Allan Poe Museum, and they're selling books and books on tape. And I mean, here's a question for you, Gonzo. Why do a lot of theater companies do Shakespeare in the Park every summer, and also have usually one Shakespeare show a season or two as part of their regular shows? Any idea?
Well, it's because Shakespeare can be relevant always. You know what I mean? Like, we learned about Shakespeare in school. So it's the same thing as Warrior. Like, they can make money off of that. It can still be relevant. It's you're carrying on the legacy, you know what I mean, onto new generations and younger people. And I feel like it's a parallel with exactly what I'm saying with Warrior. You can just carry on that legacy and affect more people at younger ages, more next generations, all that stuff. And so that would be my thought.
But guess who you don't have to pay these days if you do Shakespeare in the Park?
Shakespeare.
You don't have to pay them. And you have a name value that if the average consumer hears the word, oh, we're going to go see Shakespeare in the Park, as opposed to we're going to go see the new Mike Messier play in the park, at this point, more people are going to say, well, I know who Shakespeare is. Who's this Mike Messier guy? So, yeah. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying that's business.
Valid point.
So these, if you ever talk to someone like, man, why are they always doing Shakespeare? I can never understand it. And, these witches make no sense. And I've seen Romeo and Juliet 20 times in the last 20 years at the local theater company, because they're not paying residuals anymore. So there you go. And when you have a commodity, and, in this sense, Warrior as a brand, not him himself, but is a commodity. And once they've made that final transaction and that final deal, okay, I would suggest, but I don't know for a fact, that his widow, Dana Warrior, and the kids are easier to deal with than he was, because he wasn't a pushover. And I think the position that these ladies are in are, they're just so sad because they lost their father and the husband, that they're not in a point to negotiate very tough. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
In any event, one thing we didn't get into too much was his time in WCW, his time in World Class Championship Wrestling, his time in the UWF. I don't know if I have any big opinions on any of that stuff. that's so unique that I need to get into it too much, except to say, oddly enough, well, I've got 2 final points. And Gonzo, if you got any final points, I'll let you get those in your mind. My 2 final points are his WCW run. A lot of people remember the horrible, including Warrior had a laugh about it, that horrible Halloween Havoc Warrior Hogan match was horrible. Warrior even watched it with his kids and his wife, and they all laughed about it, how bad it was. And he said, I can't believe it. I wrestled this guy in one of the greatest matches of all time, and 6 or 7 years later, we're wrestling one of the worst matches of all time. So he had a laugh about it. Mm-hmm. I guess it was 8 years later to be exact, 8.5. But the night after that, if you ever seen the night after that show, the Monday Nitro, he got one of the biggest pops going. It was like the fans, I don't know, I can't speak for the fans, wherever that venue was, but they were so happy to see Warrior, and maybe even like, hey, man, we still love you despite that lousy match you had last night. Like, they still dug it. So if you ever find that Nitro, the night after Halloween Havoc, it's one of the biggest pops you'll ever hear. Here's my second thought. A lot of this stuff, and maybe we were dancing around it too much, I don't know. The Yukon stuff, the homosexual comments and everything. For all the things that Warrior said in that horrible situation for everybody, have you ever seen the match that he had overseas, which I think is his last match, with the guy that used to be in JBL's corner?
Orlando Jones. Orlando
Jordan.
Orlando Jordan.
Okay, Orlando Jordan, African-American wrestler. I believe he was bisexual. He was openly bisexual wrestler. He kind of used that for his gimmick later on in Impact Wrestling, but it was an open secret. It wasn't a secret. Orlando was a bisexual guy. And that was Warrior's hand-chosen opponent, I believe, for his final wrestling match ever. Overseas, and was it Australia or where was it? It was something like that.
I think it was Australia.
Yeah, it was Australia. So he's wrestling a bisexual guy who's an openly bisexual guy, African-American guy. They have the match. Of course, the Warrior wins, but the Warrior, after the match is over, he gets the microphone and he's putting Orlando over for 10 minutes. He's singing this guy's praises for 10 minutes. He's saying, you're the future of the business. You are a great competitor. I won tonight. You know, he's keeping character, but he's basically putting Orlando Jordan over better than anybody could, and better than Orlando ever did himself, to be honest with you. Better than the WWE or Impact ever did. Now, Orlando hasn't lived up to this, to the praise that Warrior was heaping upon him. But, folks, I don't think that Warrior was so ignorant of Orlando's situation that he didn't know he was a bisexual guy, because he was very open about it. No big deal. But here's the Warrior putting this guy over like $1 million on the mic. And I just can't think that did he say some horrible things about the homosexual community? Apparently he did. But at least in this one particular situation with a guy who's openly bisexual, which constitutes homosexual, he was putting the guy over big time. So what can I tell you? That's what happened. These are the facts that I've seen and heard. Other people might want to pick and choose like Swiss cheese what they put into their opinion, but I try to cover all the bases. And those are my 2 final thoughts. Gonzo, go ahead.
No, actually, I'm really glad you brought that up, because if you didn't bring it up, I was going to bring it up. But and the promo he cut after that match with Jordan, putting him over, it was very similar to the motivational videos. You're basically telling the guy, you have the potential to be one of the top guys, and I'm going to put this belt down, and there's going to be a tournament, and you're going to win that tournament. You're going to get this belt back because you're able to do it. You have the capability and everything like that. So, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is a good point. And actually, I didn't know that Orlando Jordan was bisexual. I had no idea. But yeah, and so I think it just goes back to people say stupid shit. We all do it and regret it and move on from it. That's it. So, and on the WCW thing too, I wanted to bring that up. You go back and watch that first Nitro when he came out. I mean, dude, that place was erupted. And right. even when he was talking on the mic, like, he was getting pops out of them throughout the whole promo and everything. You know, people talk about how he went over time and all this other stuff, but you know what I mean? Like people were connected to that. And you know, I don't think that the WCW thing was his fault at all, obviously. I just think the booking was poor. And not all of it was that bad anyway. You know, there was some good stuff in there, you know, throughout that 3-month run or whatever it was. But like you go back, like you said, watch the Nitro after Halloween Havoc, and then also watch the first Nitro when he showed up. I remember when I was a kid, and I mean, shit, I mean, the internet had just come out at that time, but somehow like my father and his friend were probably going to fucking Meltzer's site or something and getting fucking dirt sheet reports and stuff. So they knew he was telling me like, you know, they're saying he's going to be going to WCW Ultimate Warrior. And I'm like, what, dude? But I mean, there was a lot of anticipation for that, you know, and yeah, it didn't live up to what it could have been, but certain aspects of that were awesome. You know, the match didn't deliver. Some of the stuff was stupid, like the mirror thing when he's looking in the mirror. That wasn't. I
kind of like the mirror thing. I kind of like the mirror thing, to be honest with you.
I mean, I thought it was okay, but like, I just felt like they shorthanded everything. You know what I mean? They cut everything short. You know, they didn't go as deep with it as they could have. And I'm sure. I think I've actually heard him say like, you know, that could have been the best story in WCW at the time, but they didn't want to do that. You know. And I agree with that. The people were definitely if they would have had a great match at Halloween Havoc, they could have rode that thing out for so long. Warrior could have went against, you know, Kevin Nash next. He could have went against Scott Hall. Could have went against other guys in NWO. They could have rode that thing out for a while. He could have been just like Sting, like the vigilante for the NWO. And but they didn't. You know, it was just poor booking. And it always goes back to people saying, "Oh, he was so hard to work with." So hard to work with. But I just think that people weren't on that level. He was on another level.
Yeah, you know, he was go ahead.
No, go ahead.
He was a very creative guy. One thing that the comic books, I think I have issue 1 and 2. The comic books were pretty fun. And the Distrucity thing I actually enjoyed, because if you actually do the research into what he was talking about with Distrucity. Hi, Austin. How you doing, buddy? Austin, feel free to watch the replay of this because it was a really good conversation today. I know you kicked in late, but watch the replay when you can. This was fun.
Yeah.
Well, the comic books were actually really awesome artwork. And so, I mean, I dug it, man. The guy had a certain style. Like I said, I became more of an Ultimate Warrior fan based on his motivational videos 2011-12. Some people were just hardcore wrestling fans. What surprises me, Gonzo, is the amount of Ultimate Warrior fans that don't know about the 2011-12 motivational videos. Like, there's probably 2%, if that, of people that think of Ultimate Warrior. They just think of shaking the ropes and beating Hogan and Macho Man and all that good stuff. But I just kind of wish that more of the people of that ilk who just knew him from the wrestling in the 80s and 90s, I wish more of them would knew the stuff that he's talking about. Here I am, Warriors in my bar, getting ready to start my day. That type of thing. The Warrior University, I actually signed up for. I was paying for it for a couple of months. I was in that group, and that's how I got access to some of the videos that people can find on MikeMessier.com. I was in that Warrior University group, and I enjoyed it. You know, it was a very, I don't want to say crude, but a very minimalist website, right? Like he had this website, and you can kind of tell that, I guess Steve Wilton is the guy that gets credited as Warrior's web guy, but Warrior was kind of like on his own trying to figure out this website because he's putting up videos, but they're kind of like in the wrong spot. You know what I mean? So your like content was great, but you're like trying to figure this website out. Like it's just so crude and elementary. Like, oh shit, here's a whole new video that they didn't really have labeled in the right spot. It just one of those deals where you could tell Warrior, like myself, just trying to figure this crap out as he goes along. But the content was so good. Somewhere I have a video, an hour with Warrior. It's Warrior speaking for over an hour at this training center.
That.
Yeah,
I watched that. That was good.
I think I've got that on private link now. So if anyone wants to see it, you guys send me a private message somehow on Facebook or here, and I'll send you the private link because I don't want that taken down, but I got to have it on private. But the thing you were talking about earlier with Alex, what's the band called? Alexandria?
Asking Alexandria.
Asking Alexandria. He was starting to do a pilot, a TV show pilot, where he was going to motivate rock bands. Like he was going to motivate like millennial rock bands that were doing drugs or stoned or hanging out with their girlfriends. And he was trying to get these like 120-pound musician guys to lift weights. And I just thought it was a cool concept because talk about reaching to another generation. He was going to reach this generation of millennials at the time, 8 years ago. They were the young people. Now they're washed up too, like everybody else. But he was reaching out to the millennials to get them to put some muscle on their bones, some meat on their bones, and get them off alcohol. And he's like lecturing to I thought it was a cool concept. I wish the show had aired.
There's actually two of them.
Yeah, there's two pilots that he did.
Yeah.
Do you remember the other band and the other one?
I See Stars.
I See Stars, right.
Yeah.
And these shows were fun. He did this other the sun is attacking my side of the podcast, by the way. But the other one was Warrior had this thing where he wanted regular schlubs to come up in the summer of, I think, 2012 or 13. I actually applied for it. Like he was looking for guys to come up and do a weekend of taping. And I applied. I didn't get selected. But if you see this video, because they have the raw footage up there, he's destroying these guys. And these guys, some of them are in good shape and some of them are not. They all got through it because I think it was a thing where the group mental mentality took over. But I'm kind of glad that I wasn't there, to be honest with you, because I don't know if physically I could have handled it. He was destroying these dudes, man.
He was. And it was funny because I actually just watched that within the last few months or whatever on YouTube, because it's like an hour-and-a-half video of that on YouTube. Yeah, anybody can find it. And at the end, he's like, "All right, it's all over. Like, you want to go get something to eat? You guys did it or whatever, And he applauds the guys, and he basically says, like, do you think I do this every day? You think I work out like this every time I work out? He's like, but sometimes you have to push yourself to the absolute fucking limit to figure out what you're made of. And that was the whole point of it. That was the whole point of that thing. Even throughout, he's saying, I remember one guy was really struggling or whatever, and he's saying to the guy, what are you going to do if you're with your wife, you got two, because the guy had wife and kids. What are you going to do if somebody breaks into your house? What are you going to say? Like, sorry, I can't do anything to make, defend us. You know what I mean? So it's like he was really pushing these guys in all kinds of ways.
Yeah, he was pushing them in all kinds of ways, and credit to those guys. What a memory to have. If any of those 12 guys are out there watching us, please contact me. Here, in case people didn't see it, here's the picture of me and the Warrior. You know what I mean? And here's the thing. Some of these things, you can call it marking out. You can call it whatever you want. These conventions with actors or wrestlers, they're not always my thing, but this thing in particular, before we wrap, I just got to find the name of that wrestling group. I want to make sure I have it right because, and I'm going to put the link to that whole story and the videos. I want to make sure that I give credit to that wrestling group because I'm sure it was a pain for them. They had to hire Warrior. They had to fly him in. They had to try to get their money back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let me just make sure I know the Big Time Wrestling, Friday, October 5th at the Reggie Lewis Center. And what holiday is that? Like Memorial Day weekend?
No. It's Columbus Day.
It's Columbus Day. So guess what? It was a Friday night that this show was happening, and I'm driving from Rhode Island to Boston, which people always tell you, oh, that's just an hour away. Not really.
Yeah.
When you actually do the drive, you're anywhere from an hour and 10 minutes to 3 hours, right? And
it all depends on the traffic.
And this is a holiday weekend on a Friday night. It was misery. I left super early, and it was still tough. And then the event was it was an interesting time. But I'm going to put that link right there. If people want to check out, they can find some of the videos I mentioned. And Gonzo, I'm going to wrap it up. I
Yep.
really appreciate this. It's been good talking Warrior. Fans that are
Hell yeah.
watching the replay, YouTube channel, hit that alarm button. Sometimes you got to hit it, knock it off, and then hit it again. So if you see your subscribe red thing, and then next to it's like a little clock, you want to make sure that the button has its things on so that you're subscribed and you're getting the notifications. That way you can come in here and join the live stream, and I'm always putting people over. If people have links or whatever, I'll put it over. Gonzo, man, anything you want to mention about yourself, social media before we wrap it up? Go ahead.
Yeah. You guys can find me on Instagram, the Gonzo Shark, and then on Twitter, Gonzo Shark 1. And that's basically all I got right now for
Awesome.
the time being.
And what's the name of that Ultimate Warrior fan group on Facebook? We'll mention it in case people want to apply to be in there. They can do that. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's One Warrior Nation Generation. So if you just go into the groups, it's called OWN, One Warrior Nation Generation, OWN.
So
actually, it's OWNG, technically, OWNG.
So the group is at the end of it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Well, this has been Mike Messier and the Gonzo. I appreciate it. A couple of guys from Florida, originally from New England. We've look, I could even go into a whole thing about how Warrior probably planted some seeds for me to move out of New England too, buddy. But
yeah,
my book, A Distance from Avalon, When the Dying and the Dead Reunites, on Amazon. I've got my film primer. It's a Kindle-only book. It's a short one, but it's a good one. And like I said, the YouTube channel is what I'm kind of really working on these days. So subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. Gonzo and Mike, on behalf of all the Warriors, say always believe.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.